What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the W.A.R. TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Today, we got a guest on that spent many years of his life in prison in Tennessee, went through some things as a child. You know, he can tell it better than I can. Brandon, tell the people who you are and talk a little bit about you.
Oh, my name's Brandon. I'm actually from Kentucky. Got caught up in Tennessee. Did about 6.5 years, almost 7 years in Tennessee Department of Corrections. I was a child, went through some crazy stuff until I was about 4 years old. Actually lived a good life after that, and then got caught up on a charge and ended up in prison.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened in your life when you were a kid. What did you see? What did you experience in your house?
So from the time I was born to the time I was 4 years old, my mom and dad, they were real bad drug users. Besides them, the rest of my family was actually pretty great, right? You know, churchgoers, all that. They went on their own path. Um, so my mom and dad actually had split up about 6 months before the tragic incident that I'm fixing to tell you happened. And my mom had gotten a new boyfriend, right? So my dad fought to see me and got rights to see me. Well, one day we were chilling at the house. I'll never forget it. It was a Wednesday. You know, I was 4 years old. I don't remember. I remember watching like Ninja Turtles on TV. And then I remember going in the bedroom and my mom and dad were talking to me. I didn't know what drugs were, right? But I'm sure they were just high out of their mind. And I remember my dad, he just grabbed my mom and he strangled her to death. I was standing at the foot of the bed and he literally grabbed one of her bras and strangled her to death. And then I don't know how much time lapsed between that and the time my grandma picked me up. I'd say it's about 30 minutes, just judging from when I was a kid. And my grandma come and got me from church, and my dad actually walked me to the door, stone faced like nothing happened, handed me to my grandma. We went to church. And after that, like, you know, I was a kid, so I didn't understand what death was, right? You know, and I'd seen a few incidents before where, like, when my mom and dad were together, there was a couple times. I remember one time he threw her through like a glass storm door. One time we were riding down the road, he threw her out of a moving car going about 40 miles an hour. He was pretty abusive, right? To my mom. He never abused me. I can say that. He never abused me. But to my mom, he was pretty brutal.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a sister, but she was 2 years older than me, and she lived with my grandma. So she didn't live with my mom and dad. She lived with my grandma.
Talk a little bit. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, buddy.
As a kid, you know, eventually you end up in prison and you end up in a white supremacist gang kind of, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But growing up as a kid, you lose your mom. You said you didn't really know what death was. You couldn't comprehend it at 4 years old, but you knew your mom wasn't there no more, right?
Yes, I did. And you know, it kind of split up my family because my dad's side of the family were actually good people, but who I ended up living with was my mom's mom. So I only knew half of my family growing up because, of course, my grandma had a lot of hate towards that side of the family. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? The only person I really knew on my dad's side of the family, we went to school together. I had a cousin that was 1 year younger than me, and I'm from a small town, so we went to the same school growing up, and I knew him, and that was all I knew from my dad's side of the family growing up.
I, so as a 4 year old, I mean, you knew that your mom wasn't there. Do you remember times of being feeling heartbroken like you didn't have a mom?
Oh, until, I mean, still this day. I mean, it bothers me.
Can only imagine. What was your life like at your grandmother's house?
Man, I can honestly say, and this is going to sound, I don't know the kind of words I'm supposed to say on here, but it's going to sound kind of shitty. But if that would have never happened, I probably wouldn't have ever lived the life that I lived, because I lived a great life. After I was 4 years old, my grandma took care of me. You know, I played sports, made good grades in school. Um, I had, you know, I'm from a very small community, right? So I had a lot of support. Grew up in the church, things like that. You know, I was actually a pretty good kid growing up.
When did your life start to take a change where you were on this path to go to prison?
Man, it was okay. So I grew up. Um, I got with a girl very young in my life who had a kid that wasn't my kid, right? And we tried to make it work. It didn't work. And so 2010, so in 2010, I was 24. We split up, right? And we had been together for 6 years since I was 18. Okay. And so I went on the single life. But before that, now, I wasn't a career criminal. I went to school. I went to college. Had a great job. But I got with a girl, and she lived in the town that I worked in Clarksville, Tennessee, right? And she was no good. Like, she was just no good. I don't know what drew me to her. I have no idea to this day what drew me to her. And we were in a relationship for about 6 months, right? And one night she called me to her house. So I go over there. I walk in the back door like I always did. Nobody ever went in the front door in the house, right? It's kind of one of those things. So I walked in the back door, and as soon as I turned around, a guy smacked me in the head with a baseball bat 4 times. So I throw my arm up to defend myself. He broke my arm and hit me one more time. And I heard the bat hit the ground. Dink, dink, dink. I grabbed a knife off the kitchen counter and I stabbed him 6 times from his, like on his side, right? Because I was still kind of bent over. And I stood up and shoved a knife through his chest, to the point that the handle of the knife broke off, and it's a 14-inch butcher knife.
And does he live?
He did, but barely. I was in the mindset at that time, I was trying to kill dude, right? Because he had just attacked me, like, with a deadly weapon. But it went through both sides of his lung, and I tried to pull it out and stab him again. I was really trying to kill this guy. You know what I'm saying? I guess something just clicked in my head where, like, I wanted to kill the guy. Like, I didn't know who the guy was. And it ended up being a guy that she had in jail, but she never told me about. And he gets out, and that was the end of that story. And so we both get life flighted on a helicopter to Vanderbilt University in Nashville. And they charged me, they initially charged me a first-degree attempted murder, aggravated burglary, and three counts of aggravated assault. They charged me for every stab wound he had on his side, attempted murder for the stab wound in his chest, and burglary because in the state of Tennessee, there's no stand your ground law, right? So even though I was invited in that house, I didn't kick the door in, nothing like that. It doesn't have to be vocalize that you're an intruder, right? Like if I come in your house and you just decide that I'm not welcome there, then I'm considered an intruder in your house in the state of Tennessee.
Why does dude hit you with the bat? He just thinks you're some dude breaking in?
No, she told him who I was. She told him we had been messing around, and it was a setup. I mean, it was a complete setup.
Pretty much set you up. Do you go to prison for that?
Yes, because the way the Tennessee statute is wrote for attempted murder and burglary, I was dead rights guilty.
You end up copping out. You get a plea. What do they sentence you to? I know you said you did 6 years, but what was your sentence?
Okay, I did my initial plea. So I went to court like 12 times, right? But this guy was just such a piece of shit that he wouldn't ever show up to my court hearing. And then in the state of Tennessee, they require that your victim agrees to your sentence, right? So he would never show up because he always had some petty warrant for stealing copper or some dumb stuff. You know what I'm saying? So finally the DA comes to me and they're like, look, will you take 8 years? I've already been in the county for a year and a half, and they're trying to give me 8 at 30. You know, I know that doesn't happen in the feds, right? So they tried to give me 8 at 30. I go to court, and he just happened to show up and told me it wasn't enough time. So they end up giving me 10 and a half years at 30%.
I mean, this is a guy that's been in prison and everything, and now he's on some cop shit.
No, he was never in prison. He was just a petty criminal.
Okay.
Just like on some low down, just like dirty shit, you know,
You go
shop
into,
and stuff like that.
So you go into this Tennessee Department of Corrections. You know, I've talked about Georgia. I've talked about Alabama, Florida. I mean, there's some things going on in Tennessee. I've been around some of these dudes that did time in the state over there. How old are you when you walk in?
I was 26 years old.
26 years old. What's going through your mind? Because you said you were in college before, not really a troublemaker. What's going in through your mind when you walk in here?
Honestly, I was pissed off at the world because I felt like I shouldn't have been there. And my mindset was different than anything I'd ever had in my entire life. Like, I was ready to show them, hey, you want to put me in prison? I'm going to show you that I can be that guy. You know what I'm saying? And I messed up from day one. From day one.
I see you got that Confederate flag tattooed on your hand. You end up joining a gang, right?
Yep.
And now the viewers will get mad at me if I don't let you talk about day one. You said you messed up from day one. What happens on day one?
Okay, so going back to my dad, right? My dad's been locked up to this day 33 years, but at this time he'd been locked up about 22, 23 years, right? And my dad was a gang member in Kentucky, right? And so when I turned 18, I started having a little bit of contact with my dad. And it kind of, for the first time in my life, I saw my dad in myself. And I started hanging around. There were some guys, you know, when you go to classification, some of the guys are brand new. Some of the guys are coming back, right? So I clicked up with the guys that were coming back, you know, and there was just happened to be an influx of guys that were coming back that were white supremacists. And that's who I clicked up with. I mean, from day one off the bus. And I knew that's what I wanted to do.
What was the gang?
Well, the gang that I ended up joining was called W.A.R, which was White Aryan Resistance. And in Tennessee, you've got Brotherhood Forever, which is their version of AB. Then you've got the Aryan Nation, and then you've got W.A.R. And you got a couple other little, they're not big, but you got like, really DWBs aren't allowed on the compound anywhere in Tennessee. Um, but you've got like some hammer skins and stuff like that that kind of just fall in with, you know, whoever's on the compound pretty much, right? So I ended up clicking up with the W.A.R and Resistance, because those were the guys that I just gravitated to. They were the realest guys there, and that's who I wanted to be around.
So you're a young kid. I mean, really, you're not. I shouldn't say a kid, but you are in a sense. You're 26 years old. You're walking into prison. What's it like to join a gang? Do you have to put in some work? You got to, do something violent to somebody? Do they just sign you up? Like, okay, you're signed up. How's it work?
Well,
Some people don't know.
I started a probation period that went, okay, let me explain this. During my classification process, we got stuck at classification, right? You're not supposed to probate at classification, but they had just opened a new prison in Tennessee called Trousdale Turner Correctional Complex, right? Well, that place kind of went off the rails from the time they opened it, because what the state of Tennessee did was they sent letters to all the wardens across the state and said, send me a list of who you want to send to Trousdale. Who do you think was on that list?
It's obvious.
All your trouble, right? Every person, every troublemaker. So they ended up on a no intake policy at Trousdale. So it halted us because couldn't nobody get shipped. So I ended up in classification for, it's supposed to be like 45 days. I ended up for like 4 or 5 months. And so I ended up actually starting a probate there, which was brought down. It was agreed upon by, the president, vice president of the organization, right? Because the guy that I probated under, he was a long-time member, right? So I go from classification to I actually got lucky. Like, I should have never made this decision, because where I got shipped was Morgan County Correctional Complex, which I don't know if you know anything about Tennessee, but it's divided into 3 sections. You got East, which is like, they call that, that's the laid back side of Tennessee, right? You got Northeast, Morgan County, Bledsoe, right there. Then you've got Middle Tennessee, which is, it gets kind of bad there. But then you get the Wild Wild West, which is Northwest, Hardeman County, Whiteville, all these CCA prisons. And they sent me to Morgan County. So I go to Morgan County. I finish up my probationary period, get patched in, and I ended up putting in a lot of work there, and I did it on my own, and I did it. It wasn't a shot that was given to me. It was a shot I took up on myself, because I had a homeboy at Morgan County that had just had hip replacement surgery, right? And his hip replacement surgery went bad, so he was in a wheelchair. I was in Unit 9. He was in Unit 10 at Morgan County. And he was the only one in Unit 10, though, correct? So it was commissary day. They brought the commissary carts, and he went and got his commissary. He got a lot of money from home. Got a lot of money from home, order commissary every week. But who's going to mess with him? I mean, he's affiliated in Tennessee. The white guys didn't get messed with in Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? Especially out east, because that's where we were deep. And this Muslim guy, I don't know why, he decided he was going to rob him for his commissary sack. So he robbed my boy for his commissary sack. And he's in a wheelchair, dude. This dude's in a wheelchair. So we go to chow that night, and he was like, he had his head down, he's looking around. You could tell something wasn't right? He didn't want to tell us. We don't expect him to put in work at that point. He's handicapped, but he had been down for a long time. So there's two different call outs after chow. You get the yard, and then you can either go back from the yard or go to the yard after like an hour and a half, right? So I laid back, waited for the second call out, went to his unit during that wreck call out, and stabbed that dude up.
How many times you hit him?
I hit him 5 or 6 times. 5 or 6 times. And I went to his cell. You know, I had I had a shank on me, but I went to his cell and I just looked in there, and he was the only one in there. I just opened the door, and at that point, I'm not calling you out. I'm just gonna stick you. You know, and that's what happened.
Say nothing to him. Do you think he just knew what it was?
As soon as he saw me, he knew what it was. Yeah.
Did he try to fight back?
He couldn't fight back. He was sitting on his bunk counting my homeboy's commissary.
Let me ask you this, right? How big are you?
I'm at the time, well, I'm 5'8", about 210, 220 now. At the time, I was about 5'8", 185, but I was pretty, I was pretty cut up. Not big, not big at all.
There was no fighting back.
No, he was sitting on a bunk. He couldn't get up.
I know earlier, because I heard this before. I know earlier you said that in Tennessee, like the white dudes don't really get victimized there, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's real and it's raw. There are some prisons where they do get victimized, where, different people get victimized in different prisons. So are you saying like the white dudes aren't victimized over there?
Well, no, they do. But this is out east. Like I said, out east, the Aryans are deep, right? And a lot of times out east, if there is a white guy getting, messed with, it's white on white. It's usually because the way it works in Tennessee is you got W.A.R, Brotherhood Forever, and Aryan Nation, right? Usually, if it's infighting, it's the Aryan Nation that's fighting against W.A.R and Brotherhood.
Think about that, where white dudes are fighting each other and victimizing other white dudes, being that you were in a white gang.
Yep.
You think about it. Do you think that do you ever be like, man, that's messed up? Like you're victimizing your own people?
Yeah, but eventually I learned the politics, and eventually it was because I was still green at this time, man. I'd been locked up a while, but I was fighting my case for a while, and I'd only been in prison 10 months, almost a year at this time. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't understand. And when it comes to white on white in Tennessee, it's usually because they get checked because they're not checking their own. And they feel some kind of way about it, Because one thing about white supremacist groups is you're not supposed to get high. I mean, you're really not supposed to. I mean, that's one of the ideologies. You're not supposed to get high. You're definitely not supposed to be using a needle.
Dudes are doing that stuff. I mean, there's repercussions when they violate the rules.
Yes, and usually when it was white on white, it would be another gang going to another white gang saying, hey, your brother's over there shooting dope. What are y'all going to do about that?
Crazy.
Because we're all wearing the same signs, right? We've all got the swastikas. We've all got the bolts. So if you're going to rock that, at least live up to what it means. Don't make us look stupid.
Earlier, before we got on the video, you had said something about it was one of the biggest mistakes you ever made was joining a gang.
It was a huge mistake.
Tell us why. Tell us why you feel that was a mistake.
It was a mistake for me, and this is further on in my story, but it cost me about 2 extra years in prison.
And what, for committing other violent acts within the prison?
Not only that, but just being STG confirmed. Because once I hit that guy up, and they took me to the hole. They take pictures. Once they get their pictures, you're in the database.
Let's tell the people what STG is so they know. Security Threat Group. I want them to know.
Yes.
Now you're classified as a STG. You stab this dude. He doesn't die. How long are you in the hole for?
I was in the hole. I actually went to the gang unit, which was close security. I didn't get maxed out, believe it or not. I went to close security, went to a gang unit for 9 months.
What's it like in that gang unit?
It sucks. It sucks. And the crazy part was the gang unit was at Morgan County. It was just on a different site at Morgan County. Morgan County's got 3 different sites. They got the old compound, which is the good place to be. And then they got the gang unit. Then they got Max at Morgan County also.
Let's enlighten the people about joining a gang. Because, we always hear people on YouTube channels talking about their gang and this and that. But, you talked about probating. Tell the people what that is. And, you're probating under a guy that, had some clout. He's been a gang member for a long time. Are you kind of like, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I used to see it this way. Sometimes you're like a do boy. You do what he says. Hey, look, man, do this, handle that. And people don't really see it like, look, hey, man, we had a friendship and, it's my boy. But really, a bunch of bullshit.
Let me tell you something about the guy I probated under, and I'll never say anything bad about him because he was a good dude. And if all those dudes were like him, it wouldn't have been like it was. I got lucky. The guy that brought me on, he didn't do that, man. Actually, when we was in classification, they had a dude that snitched on a guy bringing contraband back from visitation. Right, this is still at classification. He could have sent me out to handle that, right? As soon as dude walked in the pod, he went smack the fuck out of him. Open hand smacked the fuck out of him.
It's a wild life in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're probating, I mean, did you have to go on missions while you were probating?
What I did, okay, the first thing they call a heart check, right? So what they'll do is they'll put you in a cell with a couple guys and just make sure you're going to fight back. Just make sure, you got that fight or flee mentality, right? They're going to make sure you're not going to flee. So they put you in a cell with a couple guys. They kind of set you up, right? Like you might be coming back from chow. They might have a couple guys just snuck off in your cell. And they just start beating the hell out of you. You're not going to win. I mean, you're not going to win. But do you fight or do you not? And if you don't, it's over right then. You know what I'm saying? And then, there's always business at the end of the day. It's always about making money. There's a box that you've got to donate to every month. That keeps all the brothers up because not all the brothers are going to have money coming from home. You know what I'm saying? So we take care of everybody. That's what kind of drew me into it.
Eventually, you're probating, and now finally it comes this day. What do they say? All right, bro, you're in. We're going to give you a patch. What's that day like for a younger guy that's in prison that finally made it?
Dude, for me, I felt like I was on the king. I felt like I was king of a mountain. Like, for real. Like, I mean, it was looking back on it, man, that's probably the happiest day I've had in a very long time. Because I felt like I made something. I felt like I made myself something. I felt I was proud of that. Very proud of that.
You have a son?
Do what?
You have any kids?
I do.
You have a son?
No, I've got 2 daughters.
Let me ask you this. If you had a son, right?
Yep.
You never want him to feel like his proudest day was joining a gang, would you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Do you regret that day now, in hindsight, or no?
Yeah, I wish I went about it a whole lot different, buddy. I really do.
So now, you're initiated now. They're putting this patch on you. Are you guys eating food? Or the bros are like, all right, bro, you're part of us. And do you feel like a brotherhood? I mean, how do you really feel? I know you said you were happy, but what's it doing to you inside?
I felt like I was part of I felt like I was part of a cause. That was a good cause. Because like you've talked about on your channel a lot of times, prison is racially segregated, right? So even though you've got your white gangs in Tennessee State Prison, they call them peons. But what they do is, you're the gang, but you still look after the peons, you know, if that makes sense.
Of course. I mean, I know what you're talking about. Let me ask you this, though. Is there times when the peons are disrespected? Like, yo, don't touch the TV. Like, you're a nobody, bro.
Yes. And that gets handled. And how that gets handled in Tennessee is you go handle your business. I'll catch the door for you, but you go handle that business. And if they won't handle that business, then you get off my pod.
So it's kind of I mean, not in that way, but it's kind of like an oxymoron sometimes where we're like, hey, look, you're a peon, but we're going to hold you down if something happens to you as long as you fight back. You ever have
Yeah.
guys that were peons that fought back and now you guys are like, yo, dude's kind of like a tough dude. We should bring him in. And then they join the gang?
No, some guys just weren't like that. You know what I'm saying? Some guys just weren't never gonna be gang material. But hey, you know what? If you'll stand up for yourself, I'll stand up for you. And that's what I liked about that's what I didn't like about the Aryan Nation guys. But I liked about our guys.
That specifically that you didn't like?
About the Aryan Nation guys, they didn't do that kind of stuff, man. They were all about themselves. I've got some friends that are great Aryan Nation guys, right? And they were the biggest white gang in Tennessee. But what does that tell you also?
They have the most power. They do what they want, right?
No, what that tells you is they'll take anybody.
Oh, okay, that part. Yeah, I mean, I've been around that 1,000 times. A
Yeah,
lot of independent dudes. I mean, I've seen that with our own car where, we're supposed to be an East Coast car and you're taking dudes from Oklahoma, Texas. So, yeah, I mean, they care about the numbers and not about the men.
man, I punked out some of those dudes so hard and they wouldn't do shit. And I didn't punk them out just because,
I
man.
don't get the line now.
No. I wouldn't just go up to them because of nothing. You know what I'm saying? They did some foul shit. And the thing about it is you got the black gangs, right? And in Tennessee, you got 4 main black gangs: Crips, Bloods, G's, Vice Lords, right? All they see is that swastika. They don't really know the separation, right? So if you're doing some foul shit and you're getting in debt and not paying your debt and shit like that, I'm gonna check you on that shit. Because you're putting my life in danger.
Let me ask you about that. You talked about the swastika and the black gang seeing it. What's their reaction when they see something like that? Are they like, man, fuck these dudes? Or, what's their reaction?
The main thing I seen, they respected it. They respected it.
Some people might be watching and be like, what do you mean they respected it? I mean, when you say they respected it, I mean, there wasn't like race riots because they seen your tattoo, things like that. I mean, they were like, hey, look, them dudes handle their business. Is that kind of what the approach was?
Well, you've got to remember that in there and out here is two different, completely different worlds, right? So they know that whites are with whites and blacks are with blacks. You know what I'm saying? Even though that's a white symbol, a white pride symbol, you know, they didn't fuck with those guys. not just because they would, for just cause, but they did. If you're on the yard and we're all working out with our shirts off, I don't know if y'all could have your shirts off in the feds. We did in the state. We'd be out there, working out together. Shower security was a huge thing in Tennessee. Shower security would get you killed in Tennessee. And they respected it. They really did. The only group that I saw that would not respect a one-on-one were the Crips.
A white dude couldn't fight a Crip one-on-one in there.
Man, I ain't gonna say you couldn't, but it was always a toss-up, dude. It was always a toss-up.
Were there one-on-one fights between races? Like a black dude could fight a Mexican, or a Mexican could fight a white, or a white could fight a black?
Damn right there was. That's how most business got handled. Like I was telling you, man, like if just say it was one of my homeboys that owed somebody $2, right? If they come up and ask him about it in a derogatory manner, you gonna fight him. And the way it will work in Tennessee is you would have one of us on the door, one of them on the door, one of us in the cell, one of them in the cell, and then the two fighting.
The dude walked up and was like, "Yo, man, you owe me $2. You better get my money, man, or you know what it is." Now the white guy's gonna make him fight because the way the dude talked to him.
He better offer the fight.
Then if he fights him, does he owe the $2, or is it over with?
No, it's over with. It's chalked after that.
Hands laid, debt paid.
Hands laid, debt paid, and you better not put boots on them. That was the rule in Tennessee. If it goes to the ground, it's over.
It would stop the fight if it goes to the ground. It's over.
Yep. Knuckle up. Whoever hits the ground, it's over.
And everybody was cool with that?